What's cracking, everybody? Hello and welcome back to Gaming 101 with Mr. Berger. I'm joined tonight again by my beautiful girlfriend Clarissa and our wonderful pet snake, Two Fangs. Yes, it's a pun on two chains. She's coming to her daddy over here. Hello. Alright, so tonight's deck, we're going to take a look at this Balloon Cycle deck. It's a really cool deck that was founded by Pompeyo. He's a Latin American pro. It was featured on Clash with Ash, and I will go ahead and try to link a card to that above this, and also link it in the description below so you can take a look at a more in-depth guide or video guide to this deck. I'm going to go ahead and recap some of the tips that he had, and also give some of my own personal tips, and show some replays in the background.
So how do you play this deck?
Okay, so this deck is kind of played like a cheap cycle kind of deck. As you can see, it only costs you 3 elixir. That's your average elixir cost. So it definitely is played like a cycle deck, and you can kind of turn it into a bit of a bridge spam, high pressure deck. So you want to catch your opponents off guard, or you want to keep the pressure up on them, and in doing so, shut them down from being able to build up big pushes and big beatdowns. So you counter heavy decks by keeping the pressure up on them. Alright, so what's next?
Oh, what's that little icon on the bottom right?
Okay, so that's a good question. I actually finally made this little watermark, something I've been meaning to do for a while. And it's one of the things that's going to help me grow my channel. It's a little thing that you can click on the bottom right there, and it'll kind of bring you to being able to subscribe to my channel if you're not subscribed to it already. And I hate to be that guy, guys, but I've been watching all these videos on how to grow your channel, and they all say, like, you know, make a watermark, tell your subscribers to share, and tell people to subscribe to your videos, or to your channel. So if you haven't subscribed already and you like this content, go ahead and do so. You can click that cool little burger icon that one of my 3rd graders drew for me last year.
It's genius.
Yeah, I know, it's great, I love it.
So what's your win condition for this deck?
Okay, so the major win condition in this deck is the balloon. As you can see there, the balloon is just placed in the left lane with the combination of the Ice Golem and the Inferno Dragon. So it's not the only win condition in a sense that, like, you see there's a lot of other cards here that have the potential to connect to the tower. You see some chip potential with the Miner and the Fireball and the Spear Goblins. You see the potential to send bats in with the Ice Golem or with the Miner, but mainly you're going for that balloon. The balloon is your major win condition, and that's usually how you're going to take down towers, is allowing that balloon to connect to the tower and to cycle through your deck and get another connection to the tower. So before we jump into the next part here, why don't we get another replay going? So that one you can see there, that was at the beginning of a classic challenge. I'm not going to share this other second one because it's not that great. So let's jump into a third one. This is versus a Golem beatdown deck, I believe. Alright, so what do we have next here?
So what does the Miner do? What's his role?
Okay, so the Miner has a pretty specific role, and you can replace him. I will get into replacement cards a little bit later. But the Miner's role is basically to counter their support cards, and it also helps you shut down pumps. So you can also, thirdly, you can use it as kind of like a tag team potential to tank for your balloon. Because your balloon's your main win condition, you send him in with the Ice Golem or the Miner to tank for him. So you can send one in and then use the Miner again. But generally, you use him to shut down like their Musketeer or their Wizard or their Witch or whatever they're using to try to kill your balloon. You send it in on that, shut down their Princess. And of course, Miner has huge potential to shut down elixir pumps as well. Why don't you get Two Fangs back in the shot here? Let's show her off. I want her to be in my videos since we have her out. Alright, so
She's resisting, she's shy.
that's okay, we'll hold her up for a little bit. She gets used to it, don't worry. So one of the things that I want to mention here, since we're talking about the Miner and the role of the Miner, you do have the potential to Miner Fireball. This is not a Miner Poison deck, so you don't have that Miner Poison combo. You don't have that, like, really deadly chip, preemptive, destroy their skeleton army, but you do have Miner Fireball. So you usually don't Miner Fireball all the time, but you can consider it as an opening move to catch them off guard. You open with Miner, they're naturally going to put something down right next to your Miner, like he just put guards down there. Of course, guards are a terrible example of something to get hit by a Fireball, because they'll survive that initial impact due to their shield, but if they put, like, let's say, a Goblin Gang, or something like that down to try to kill your miner, which is a classic counter to the miner. Then your fireball flies in and catches them off guard. Now there's a lot of strategy to that. Not only can you catch them off guard and have a very successful first push, but this can cause them to hesitate their counters later in the match. If they know that you're going to fireball miner, or they think you're going to fireball miner, and then you don't do it, then you can get a safe miner in, because they won't be putting down their goblin gang, because they'll be like, oh, he's about to fireball right after this miner, and then they're like, oh wait, no he didn't, and you save yourself 4 elixir from not fireballing and get a bunch of chip damage off with your miner, maybe even like your miner bats. Alright, so do you have any other questions about like strategy for this deck?
Well, I'm noticing a lot of cards that are vulnerable to zap. Why are they there?
Okay, so this deck definitely has an element of Zap-Bait to it. So before I talk about that, why don't we go ahead and jump into another replay. So that was the the Golem Night Witch beatdown. This is going to be a Pekka Hog deck here. So yes, there definitely is an element of Zap-Bait to this deck. So there's a few things that you want to think about when you're thinking about that strategy. A few things you want to keep in mind. So there's about 4 cards or so that are susceptible to zap. Let's look at them. You got your Spear Goblins, you got your Bats, and you've got your Inferno Dragon. So I'm mistaken. There's only 3 of them or so that are susceptible to zap. That being said, you usually want to bait out the zap to give full potential to your Inferno Dragon. Now your Bats and your Spear Goblins, they're great cards, but they're great because they're cheap and they give you a cycle potential and they can shut down opposing things for not a whole lot of elixir. So you usually want to bait out the zap with your Spear Goblins or with your Bats, and then you give your Inferno Dragon free area to roam, right? Free area to flap in his case. So he can lock onto the tower and completely annihilate it, and Zap is the general go-to counter for an Inferno Dragon or Inferno Tower, and as you can see there, he completely destroyed that tower. So that's the element of Zap that you have to this, and before we finish that section of it, you want to use your miner comboed with like your Bats or your Spear Goblins, and that's a great way to how do I say this, bait out their Zap. Because, you know, naked Spear Goblins, they'll do a little bit of chip damage to your tower, so what, big deal, right? Naked Bats, since the nerf, they literally do not even connect to your tower if they're placed alone. If they have a mini tank for them, however, like a miner or an ice golem, then they can just wreak havoc on your tower, and they can easily completely destroy a tower if left alone with like a miner tanking for them. So usually, if you use your miner comboed with your Bats or with your Spear Goblins, then they will use their zap, and that'll be good for you, because then your Inferno Dragon has room to roam or to flap. Now let's put her back in the camera. I was just trying to figure out a way so that it's not blocking the mic there, you know?
Yeah.
So maybe we can bring her... Yeah, there we go. That'll be good.
She wants to say a few words. Maybe.
Yeah, maybe she wants to talk. Alright, why don't I move this right over here? That'll work out fine. Okay. So, let's jump into the next replay here, and then we can talk about the next element of strategy. So this was one of the last matches in this run that I did here in this Classic Challenge. Again, guys, I'm not that great of a player, but Pompeyo has easily done a bunch of Grand Challenges and gone 12-0 with this deck, so it has the potential to do very well. I just wanted to share with you a few of my own personal matches and a few of my own tips and strategies for it. Alright, so what do we have up next?
And then, when do you send in your balloon?
So the balloon, as I mentioned, you kind of want to send the Bats and the Spear Goblins in when they got something tanking for them. Same thing, as you can see right there, I sent in the balloon with the miner tanking for it, and is it going to connect? Yes, it is. And one hit off the balloon does like a third or more of their tower's health. It's insane. It does so much damage. So if your balloon connects once, it does a bunch of damage, and then the death damage now does like 200 or 250 damage or something ridiculous like that. It's really strong. So if your balloon connects at all, that's really good for you. So you usually use him when you send in your Ice Golem right in front of him, or when you send in your miner, or again you kind of hand off the baton with them. And you can see there I sent in the Ice Golem right at the bridge, I sent in the balloon right after, and you notice that I sent it a little bit to the right there, yeah? So I put the Ice Golem right at the bridge where he would walk directly to the tower, closest path possible. But the balloon, on the other hand, I stifled it a little bit to the side so that if he had a defensive structure or a tornado, it was less likely to get distracted or pulled in to the center by said card. So that's kind of what you want to do. If you're pushing on the right there, you put your balloon as far right up to the bridge as far as you can, but as far right of the arena as you can, and of course on the left you do it to the left there. And that's a general rule for using things like balloons and hogs and things that kind of run in and go straight for towers like that. That's kind of the ideal placement, at least from what I've heard and seen, and that's kind of how I play. So let's see. We were talking about when we send in the balloon. So the only time that you would send it in naked without a mini tank, like the miner or the ice golem or knight or whatever you're running, is if you kind of catch them off guard and you want to send it in the opposite lane or something, or if you know that they don't have any elixir to counter it, or let's say that they just placed a golem in the right lane, you can immediately place a naked balloon in the left lane, and hopefully it'll connect to the tower. And even if it doesn't, they'll have to then spend elixir to counter your balloon, and you know, that can completely shut down their golem push, because if their golem doesn't have any support, it's very easy to counter, especially because you have an Inferno Dragon in this deck. Inferno Dragon totally annihilates a golem. Alright, so what about, let's see, what do we have next here?
Well, how do you counter the elixir pump? I see 2 counter cards.
Yeah, you're right. There are 2 counter cards for the elixir pump in this. So, first of all, you got your fireball. So you can either send your miner into the pump, or you can fireball the pump, or both. Now, as goes with any time you send a medium or heavy spell in on a structure, you want to try to hit the princess tower or the king tower, depending on where they place it. Of course, don't hit the king tower if it's not been if it hasn't been activated already, if they've still got both princess towers up. But if you've destroyed one princess tower already, you can hit it on the king tower and the princess tower and the structure with 1 fireball or 1 poison. So you want to make sure that you hit that fireball on the elixir pump and on the princess tower as well. And that was a terrible example of a fireball there, but I was just doing it to finish up the match. Actually, so that was pretty good because I was going for the quickest path possible. Okay, so let's jump into another match here. That was my 5th in that run there. Let's skip this one because we watched it already. Alright, this is a good one versus Golem Pump. So of course, the next thing that you can use is you can use your miner to shut down pumps. So you want to consider sending a distraction before you send in your miner, because if you send in your miner and they've got a pump, he's like, okay, I know he's going to send in the miner. And let's see what I do here. I actually send in a distraction. I send in the ice golem. So he's got to answer the ice golem and the balloon, right? Great example of that. He answers fully on the right, which allows my miner to completely shut down that pump. Look at that massive positive elixir trait there. It's cost me only 3 to send in the miner, and it cost him 6 to send in the pump, and then it gets it out of his hand. I also successfully get a bunch of damage off on his tower, almost completely destroy it. So that was an awesome example of how to counter the pump. You can also use your miner sent in with a fireball preemptively if you know they're going to send something to counter your miner. And even just fireballing the pump right now, I believe, is an equal elixir trade, similar to poison, because it does enough damage to bring it down to the point that it only gains them 2 elixir, and fireball and poison cost you 4. And given that 6 elixir is how much elixir pump costs, it makes it an equal elixir trade. Alright, so Fireball and Zap, you can use that on your 3 Musketeers if your enemy has 3 Musketeers. Or you may want to save it because you do have other things to counter that. You can always counter them with your cycle cards, with sending in your Ice Golem as soon as they get to the bridge, and then using bats, with sending in your Miner on the 1 Musketeer, so on and so forth. But don't get me wrong, Fireball and Zap on 2 of the Musketeers will completely shut them down, and it'll also get some chip damage off on the tower. And if they make the mistake of putting all 3 Musketeers in the same lane, you definitely want to Fireball Zap them, because that's a huge positive elixir trade. Okay, so do you have any other questions about this deck?
Well, what's one of the most difficult matchups, and how do you counter it?
So, one of the most difficult matchups I find, or what I've heard, and I definitely find this to be true as well, is not exactly a specific archetype, it's more like a specific couple cards. So I find the Tornado very difficult, and you'll find this against Hog decks too. Tornado is very difficult to answer. So the Tornado completely shuts down the balloon because it pulls it to the center, and it only costs them 3, whereas balloon costs you 5. So let's jump into another replay here that was against Bats. Alright. This next one, I didn't see his win condition until the match was almost over. Okay, so Tornado is really hard to deal with, and that's why it really shuts down your balloon, which is your major win condition. So decks that are cycle heavy with Tornado, so like a Hog Cycle or a bait, a low cost bait that's running like Ice Spirit, they can get Tornado in their hand a lot. That's going to be a difficult matchup for you. And according to Clash with Ash, Rocket decks, Tornado and Rocket, are really hard too. I'm not sure exactly why, but apparently they gave you trouble for this matchup. Maybe just because Rocket like completely shuts down the Balloon or the Balloon Ice Golem combo or something like that. So for difficult matchups like that, how are you going to counter that? Well, what you want to do is you want to try to outcycle your opponent. Keep in mind that this is only a 3 elixir cost, average elixir cost deck, so it only, you can easily outcycle whatever their counter is to your Balloon. And before I go on further, I want to show off this cool shirt. I Heart Saipan. This is where I'm from. This is my hometown, or should I say home island. Just repping the 670. Alright, that's it. Okay, so for difficult matchups, outcycle their counter. If they've got a Balloon, if they've got a Tornado to counter your Balloon, try to get another Balloon out even quicker than they can get their Tornado out. Alright, so what should we talk about next?
What about card replacements?
Okay, so let's go into card replacements. I know this video is getting kind of long, so actually no, it's only about 15 minutes. Yeah, it's not too bad. So let's go ahead and talk about card replacements. Inferno Dragon. You want to replace it with the Inferno Tower. Now, that's kind of my go-to replacement for the Inferno Dragon. What do you think?
What's the advantage of each one?
Well, the Inferno Dragon, it is a flying unit, so it's air versus ground. And on top of that, it's a unit, whereas the tower is a structure. So those serve two different utilities. The Inferno Dragon gives you a lot of counter-push potential after it's done a great job defending. And they have to answer the Inferno Dragon. If you send it down a lane and they don't answer it, it will destroy their tower. No questions asked. If it locks onto a tower without being answered at all, that tower is dead. Unless the Inferno Dragon's low health or they put something down to counter it, that tower is dead. So the Inferno Tower doesn't have that offensive potential, but it gives you a lot more sturdy defense because it sits there as a structure, and having a structure can be very beneficial because it distracts hogs, it distracts giants, it distracts golems, it distracts everything that attacks buildings. And on top of that, since it's a ground structure, if you place it in the center there, it'll distract pretty much any troops that are incoming. Skeleton Army, or Goblin Gang, or Knight, or just basically anything. So even though it might not be the best counter to those things, it still sits there as a defensive structure, which takes the focus off of your tower and allows you to play a heavy defense. But I like the Inferno Dragon because he is so awesome, and once he locks onto a tower, that tower is dead. It's great. Okay, so let's talk about the Balloon next. So the Balloon, if you change the Balloon, it would completely change the archetype. Now this is a Zap-Bait cycle deck, so you could put in another win condition. My go-to, of course, would be like Hog or something. But honestly, it changes the archetype. That's what this is. This is a Balloon cycle deck, so changing the Balloon would completely change the deck. But I would just throw in another win condition and make it like a Zap-Bait cycle deck. How about the Zap? Well, Zap, you usually want to replace it with Logger Arrows. And I'll explain that in a second here. Why don't we get another replay going? So that was the end of that one right there, right? I have one loss here that I want to share. Oh, that's going to be for my other video. Let's go ahead and go down here. Alright, so let's look at how I did things wrong and how I could have done things better, and I'll try to wrap up these card replacements. So, Zap you want to replace with another cheap spell like Log or Arrows. You probably want Zap if you can. I don't know why you would replace it with Log, unless your Log is way higher level and you haven't invested into leveling up Zap. Then you could replace it with Log. But ideally you want something that can hit air, because they're probably going to counter your Balloon with air units like bats or minions or something like that. You don't really need to replace it with another stun card like Zappies or E-Wiz.
Why not?
Well, there's no real reason to have that stun effect in this deck. You don't have anything really heavy, and the major advantage of the stun effect is interrupting Inferno Dragons and Inferno Towers and Sparkies and things that shut down your Golem or your Giant. And since you don't really have that, that stun effect is not super important, so that's not the benefit of the Zap in this. Don't get me wrong, it's still a great effect, like, it's still awesome, but that's not why you have the Zap in there. You just want that cheap spell and the thing that can hit air and counter your Balloon and things like that. So what do we have next?
Ice Golem.
Alright, so the Ice Golem. Ice Golem, replace it with another mini tank like a Knight. You could also go for a Giant or even a Valkyrie. I would want a tank like a Giant or something that goes directly for the tower to combo with your Balloon, just like I did with the Ice Golem there. But you don't want anything too heavy like a Golem. You could try it, but that would make it a very heavy deck. It would definitely take it away from being a cycle deck. So I would go with like a Giant or a Knight, maybe something like a Valkyrie right in the middle there. Alright, what's next?
How about Fireball?
Okay, Fireball. replace it with poison, maybe another heavy spell. Maybe if you want to go for another cheaper spell, if you want to run like Log and Zap or Log and Arrows or whatever, or Zap and Arrows, it will give you a faster cycle. But I think you do want a heavy spell because they're probably going to be putting stuff down, a medium or a heavy spell. They're going to be putting stuff down to counter your balloon, and you want to be able to fireball that or poison it or whatever, right? So I would go with poison. That's usually my go-to replacement for fireball because it costs the same, it does very similar damage, so on and so forth.
And Spear Goblins?
So Spear Goblins and Bats, actually, their replacements are going to be similar. You want to replace them with something else that's susceptible to Zap, such as Goblin Gang, Goblins, Minions, Skeleton Barrel, Goblin Barrel, so on and so forth. Things that they're going to zap so that you can get that Inferno Dragon out there. I wouldn't go Minion Horde because it makes your deck kind of heavy. It is susceptible to Zap, but it would kind of change the archetype of the deck a little bit. But hey, it's up to you. Try it out and let me know how it goes. Alright, so we got one card left, right? What is that?
The Miner.
The Miner. Okay, for the Miner, another mini tank. I would go with the Knight, something that has offensive potential, whereas the Ice Golem doesn't. You could also replace it with a Bandit, because the Bandit has that kind of mid-range mini tank health, a little bit less than the Knight and the Miner, I believe, but she has a lot of powerful offensive potential, similar to the Miner. You can kind of send the Miner in offensively. Now, the Bandit's dash effect is very different than the Miner's run-in or dig-in effect, but it plays a relatively similar role, so that's kind of my go-to replacement. If you don't have that, then of course just a Knight. Now, that's it for card replacements. Let's see how I went wrong here. It looks like it was really close, actually. I almost won, but I allowed him to connect with that graveyard. I didn't shut it down. You know, if I invested too much in offense, and that was it. Okay, so let's go ahead and run into the last replay here. I was doing this as we were finishing up making dinner last night. Excuse me, earlier tonight, actually. What did we have? We had pasta, right?
Pasta, my favorite.
Pasta, yeah, her favorite.
Yeah, he knows that.
Every time I'm like, okay, what are we making for dinner tonight? I don't even bother to ask anymore. I just start making pasta. Alright, so we were making the pasta, and I was waiting for the water to boil and my turkey bacon to fry and everything, so I played a match, and I walked too far away from my router, and I actually got like some lag. I just got disconnected a little bit. You might see it there. You'll see later something connects to the right tower. I can't remember exactly what, and I didn't shut it down soon enough. But anyway, let's talk about what I do here on the replay. You can see I was able to fireball that flying machine. Now take special note, keep in mind that the flying machine, as with all your units, the actual position of the air unit is where the shadow is, not where the unit appears to be. So the flying machine appears to be much higher up than he actually is. So I fireballed where his shadow was and also managed to hit the Princess Tower too. I sent in the Miner so that I have the potential to get a counter push going with the Inferno Dragon. Inferno Dragon locks onto the Ice Golem and he sends an Inferno Dragon in of his own. I use the Zap to kind of interrupt his and finish it off there with my Inferno Dragon and Spear Goblins. Unfortunately, they don't quite finish it off. Let's see, does it live any longer? No. Tower's going to shut it down. So as you can see, I'm going for that Ice Golem, Balloon combo. 7 elixir, that's all you need. Send that in. It'll do work. Now sometimes I might want to wait to see what he does like I'm doing there. I play defense with the bats, and I use the Ice Golem up front there to distract the Ice Spirit, because if they connected to my bats, I believe Ice Spirit of the same level destroys them. So the Ice Golem there was effective, and it tanks for a little bit, allowing the bats to connect. Now since I don't have the Ice Golem in hand, I play aggressive. I send in the Balloon, but with the Miner, and I go ahead and opt to use my Fireball on only the Flying Machine that time, because it's not close enough for it to connect to the Princess Tower as well. It is an equal elixir trade, I believe, because positive, it would have to cost more, and I think that they cost the same. They both cost 4, Fireball and Flying Machine. And the Balloon actually connects once. Now I use the Inferno Dragon on defense here to destroy his Ice Golem, and then it finishes off the Hog there. And look at that, man. If he doesn't answer that Inferno Dragon, it just does so much damage. So not only did it completely shut down his push there, I mean, it didn't completely shut it down because he did do good damage to my tower, but it did destroy them before it did too much damage, and then it went on an offensive push. And I gotta answer that Hog here, and unfortunately I use the bats so that they get destroyed by the Ice Golem, and then he poisons. He's running a Hog poison deck, it looks like, with Furnace and Flying Machine and Inferno Dragon. And there goes my tower. At that point I was like, okay, I'll just let the tower drop. And then I remembered, oh wait, I have no health on my left tower. And he could have used his log there to actually finish off my left tower and keep himself in the game, but he probably didn't think about that, or didn't have it in mind, or whatever. And again, I don't know why he's not poisoning my tower here. Right? He has poison in hand. Maybe he just didn't think about it. Whatever, hey, it gave me a win. Okay. So again, there's a little lag spike there where I didn't answer the hog on the right side there. So that was our little strategy and tip guide to this awesome, what do we call it? It's like a cycle deck. It's a balloon cycle deck, but it's also a Zap-Bait deck. So it's a balloon cycle Zap-Bait deck. So thank you everybody for watching. I appreciate it. I appreciate all your time and all the positive feedback that I've been getting. If you have any questions or want to see me do any decks, go ahead and leave the comments in the comment section below. I'm looking to start doing collaborations, so if anybody is interested in coming on the channel and having me feature them, or maybe we can do one video on my channel, one on yours, something like that, I think that that's a great way to grow both of our channels, so let me know if you're interested. I'm also looking for guests to showcase their decks if they're willing to come on and talk about their decks for 15 or 20 minutes. Alright, thanks everybody, and have a good night. Say goodbye, Two Fangs.
Her tail's... She's in my
sleeve. Oh, that's just her tail. Okay, say goodbye to her tail.
She's in
yeah.
here somewhere.
She's all the way up there. She's way back here. She's like sniffing your armpit or something like that.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, nice and warm up your sleeves. She's a desert burrowing species, so she likes to live in the sand.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks everybody. Have a good night.